So this is a 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor, and it is broken. Again, if you follow the channel, you know it breaks all the time. And now it's broken. My center is stuck open, and best way I can describe this is an acceleration stutter. My transmission is broken again. This is the third time now. I'm not usually one to buy into those like, you know, GM is crap or Ford is crap or whatever, but with this one I'm about to. I think this is the most unreliable vehicle I've ever had. Let me show you what's broken today. This right here, the floor is broken. No, so this truck has been leaking oil probably for like a year or two. It's been, you know, leaving a drop here, there. And the other day, one of the drops turned into more of like a puddle. So I guess it's time to finally fix it. Now the thing is, I bought this truck used with 10,000 miles on it. And when I bought it, it was leaking oil. So this specific year, 2017 and early 2018s, they came with plastic oil pans. And apparently on the assembly line, some of the oil pans got over torqued, and so they cracked, and Ford replaced that under warranty. So I've had the oil pan replaced once already. The thing is, I'm not sure this time that it's the oil pan. Let's get it in the air and I'll show you why. So if you look under here, this black guy right here, that is our plastic oil pan. And if you look all around it, like all the bolts have oil dripping off of them. The oil pan itself is just covered in oil, this cross member covered in oil. And so that like initially made me think it's the oil pan just going bad again, or the seal, because this thing, there's no seal in it. It's just silicone that seals it to the engine. But the problem is, if you look up higher than the oil pan, so like over right here is kind of a good example. It's not really higher than the oil pan, but it's like far away from it, and I doubt oil would leak kind of that direction. But so this is the timing chain cover on the front of the engine, and apparently that is something that can also go bad, because again, it's just silicone sealing it. And the problem with that is, I hope it's not that, because the timing chain cover sounds, you know, easy, replace it, right? It's the entire front of the engine is like one giant cover. So like all of your accessories, everything in the front of the engine has to come off in order for you to get that out and reseal it. So the valve covers could also go bad on this, but I don't think it's that, because that's typically associated with oil pooling at the top, or there's a crack or a leak in the valve cover running down the engine onto the exhaust manifold and burning. And I'm not getting a burning smell at all. I just have oil dripping all over my floor. So we need to do some investigative work. And the way we're gonna do that today is with dye. So this is UV dye, and the way it works is you pour it into your oil. It says 1 ounce for 5 quarts of oil, and I think this truck takes like 6 quarts of oil. I only bought 1 ounce though, so we're gonna go with 1 ounce. And then you have your black light here, or UV light, and that should hopefully help us pinpoint where the leak is coming from. So real quick here, I'm gonna clean up a lot of this oil to get it out of the way, and we don't want our UV dye just, you know, blending into existing oil. We're gonna pour our bottle of UV dye into the oil fill tube here. And then we're gonna get the engine running, let the oil circulate a little bit, take our UV light, turn the lights off, and see if we can see where the oil is coming out of. All right, so it is now 2 weeks later. I've been driving this thing, checking it like every other day or so, and I think I've got it figured out. So that dye, it does kind of work. The only problem is the entire oil pan, for some reason, the dye in the oil glows kind of like a yellowish green, and then the oil pan itself glows a yellowish green, and it's just really hard to figure out where it's coming from. But if you just take a look with the regular light, you can see it's, you know, it's all covered in oil again, but I found like not just one, but like 3 spots where it's leaking oil just from the oil pan. So that's definitely bad. There's 1 spot up there. I think it may be the early stages of a timing chain leak. We're just getting like 1 drop on that, but the oil pan definitely needs to be replaced. So I've been doing a lot of research on oil pans on this engine, which is on more than just the Raptor, it's on other trucks too. And so they came with a plastic oil pan. The next half year, started coming with an aluminum oil pan. And some people say you can replace the plastic pan with an aluminum oil pan. You just need a different oil pickup. Other people say there's a lot more to it. I don't know who's right, so I went ahead and I got a new plastic oil pan. So a lot of people say this is just gonna leak again, and there's a good chance it is, but my oil pan was replaced under the old TSB, or Technical Service Bulletin. So there's an old one, there's a new one. Supposedly the new method of the new TSB works better. Apparently the problem is adhering the silicone to the aluminum oil pan. And so if I did go and get the more expensive aluminum oil pan, this thing I think was only like 60 bucks. The other one is like 300-400, something like that. But aluminum to aluminum with silicone, if it's not adhering to aluminum to begin with, like why would it adhere more to, I don't know. But anyways, this is what we're going with. It may be a mistake. I may be doing this again in like 10,000 miles, or maybe we'll just get rid of the truck. I don't know. But the first step is we need to drain the oil, and then you can see all of these bolts right here. These all need to come out. And then there should be spots you can see like right here, right there, and right there. There's spots all around where you can kind of pry against the aluminum with you know, like a little pry bar right there to get this off of the, what is it called? Engine block stiffener. Don't call it the rest of the oil pan. It's an engine block stiffener. So whenever I first started looking at this, I thought maybe one of the things was this silly little plastic drain plug that Ford has on here, but it turns out it's not. The drain plug itself isn't leaking. It's really around the seal in between this dumb plastic oil pan and the aluminum frame stiffener, not second half of the oil pan. Sorry, it's an engine stiffener, not a frame stiffener. It's just definitely not the second half of the oil pan. They didn't just cut it in half and put plastic on the bottom. Actually, I lied. I'm cheating. I'm using the instructions on this one, and the first step is to remove the oil dipstick. I guess it goes into the oil pan, and you don't want to mess it up when you pull it out. So we're going back down. You also have to take the skid plates off, but we did that weeks ago. Ha! Mine. And apparently we may also be messing with the starter wires, so we're just gonna go ahead and erase all of our radio presets. So the instructions say you have to remove the starter, which makes no sense because it's way up there above the oil pan, so I'm not gonna do that. But there is the starter wiring harness that runs and clips into the oil pan, so we're gonna undo that clip. It also says to take off the starter wires, but I think we just kind of zip tie it up out of the way and we should be fine. You also take off these transmission cooler lines by unbolting this, but you can see I have no bolts, so you know we're already ahead of the game there. I guess, you know, Ford did that for me the last time. They forgot to put that back on, or maybe just fell off on the road. I don't know. This cross member right here comes out, so 4 bolts. We're gonna grab a big something or another and take that out. So now the front differential, this guy needs to drop down so we get access to the bolts up on the oil pan. There's 3 big bolts for that, but first we need to see if our transmission jack here can go tall enough to support it, because you're supposed to support it and then lower it once you get the bolts out. Contact. So one is up here above this greasy differential bearing that may or may not be failing on the passenger side. On the back side of the driver's side, you can see another one right up there above the front drive shaft. And then the last one I actually had to move the transmission jack to find. It's way up above the differential. And if you come up here, it's like right below the oil filter, kind of right there. That's what we're looking for. And so check this out real quick. So the instructions, they say to replace all these bolts whenever you do it. And so this bolt has clearly been wrenched on before. And so I don't think the Ford dealer I took this to followed their own instructions. I mean, I'm gonna be reusing the bolts too, but here's me and here's the Ford dealer, and oh no, what's happening? If someone else can't do it right, then I definitely can't do it right. That's how we work around here. And so with the differential drop down, we now have probably barely enough room to get to all these number of bolts to let the oil pan drop down. And there you have it, one oil pan-less truck. It really wasn't too bad. The hardest part was getting the differential bolts out. All the oil pan bolts came off really easy, and then I cracked the seal on that side and the whole thing just came right off. It really wasn't too bad. So the recommended procedure is to let this whole thing drip overnight to get the oil out. So if your Ford dealer does your service in the same day, you know they're doing something wrong. I mean, who am I kidding? I know you're not gonna get it back same day, but if after waiting for 2 to 3 weeks, they finally get to it and they do all the work in the same day, then they probably did something wrong. So we're gonna let this drip overnight and I'll see you tomorrow. So we have been dripping overnight and everything is looking pretty drippy. So now we need to clean it all up, and that's where the special procedure comes in. So to do this, you need all this stuff. There is this silicone gasket remover. Actually, first, we're going to start with these. So these are plastic razor blades, so we're not going to scratch the aluminum. We're going to scrape off as much of the silicone as we can with that. Then we'll take our silicone gasket remover, spray that on, let it work a little bit, and then try and rub off the rest of the gasket that didn't come off. We're going to do that with microfiber cloths and not a paper towel, so we don't get any lint in there and make things not seal. Then we've got official Ford Motorcraft brake parts cleaner. After that, you're going to use your engine shampoo and degreaser, which I didn't know was a thing, but use that. And then right before you put on the oil pan, you're going to use your ZC31B. So all this stuff is in the TSB. I'll link to that in the description below. So this is a special etching fluid that helps the RTV adhere to the aluminum case. And it's in a wipe form. So a case of, or a container of these goes for like $130, or you can go to eBay and there's somebody who breaks them up and shows you a sheet of each one for 20 bucks. So I did that instead. And then we've got the RTV itself. We'll throw this in a caulking gun, and that is going to go all around our oil pan when we're ready for it. Another part of this, they tell you to use alignment studs. So these two silver looking ones, holes, the rest of them are all black. Those don't have screws that slot into them, so those are gonna be our stud locations. And the instructions say you're supposed to manufacture your studs on site. And I think that what that means is take one of your old bolts, cut the head off, and that will be your stud. Just don't screw it in all the way. Make sure you can get a vice grip or something on it at the end to back it out, and then put your actual bolts in at the end. Another thing I'm gonna do real quick, I missed, there's a bolt somewhere holding the transmission cooler lines on a bracket. It's like right up in there behind there. You can't really see it. I gotta get a bolt up there because taking the oil pan off with these cooler lines right here, that was fine, but I wanna be able to get them out of the way and just shove the oil pan right up straight and not, you know, get the RTV all side to side action there. So we're gonna clean up, we're gonna get our surface ready, and then hopefully this guy will do a better job than that guy. We'll see. This stuff smells exactly like Goof Off. Just the Ford version. We are installed. Come check it out. There you have it. Nice, new, shiny oil pan. All the bolts are in. They're all torqued down. So that is an adventure in itself. So first of all, it took me forever to find the torque specs. I feel like if it's a TSB, they should just be out there. So it's 10 Newton meters for the first pass. And then once those are all torqued down in a specific order, so you're supposed to do like, you start at the middle here, and you go 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and then 5, 6, kind of all the way around like that, kind of in a star pattern. And then once that's done, then the next step is 45 degrees. So wherever your bolt ended, and then 45 degrees. So it's really not that hard. It's just, they tell you you're supposed to have the first torque setting down within 10 minutes of putting the RTV on the pan. And it's kind of quick. You have to make sure you have all of your wrenches ready. I actually did like a dry run or two of like getting that thing in there and like not touching anything, because you do have to kind of get it in there a certain way. And then the studs, so you have 10 minutes, right? I think these studs took me about 5 minutes to get out. So only thread your studs in there, like 2 or 3 threads. You really don't need much at all. And then as far as wrenches go, I used 8mm short socket with a wobbly right on there for the majority of everything. And then we had our torque wrench somewhere. Everything is chaos now. I did use this guy to just kind of thread everything up, and then I got 2 bolts in place, and then I started torquing stuff down before we got to the final result here. So another thing is the oil. They tell you to let it drip overnight, right? It doesn't stop dripping. So at some point you just have to do the degreaser, do the engine shampoo, and then just be ready to go. Put the, whatever that wipe thing is, put that on there and just be ready to go because it will not stop dripping. I think the only way to get all the oil out is to completely make the engine completely dry, which is probably part of the problem of doing this. Like, it's almost impossible to get the oil to completely stop dripping and give yourself time to get this all done. You just have to be set up and just ready to go. Also, the differential, you'll notice my my jack is now gone, and it's not a problem because remember that cross member we took out? It rests nicely on where that cross member support is. So I was able to just get that out of there, get myself some more room, and it was pretty easy to get the oil pan up in there actually. It's in tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and put the differential back in place. That's another hard to find torque spec, 129 foot-pounds on all the differential bolts. And then I can't remember where I read it, but it says somewhere that you're supposed to let the silicone cure, which kind of makes sense. So I'm gonna get the differential bolted back up, and then we'll put the oil in tomorrow, and hopefully no leaks. We don't wanna have to go to the pickle beer section. That's a bad place. You don't wanna be there. And this cross member we took out, 66 foot-pounds. I really have no idea why this stuff is so hard to find. All right, so I let this thing cure overnight. I put oil in it the next morning, and now I've been driving around for the past day and a half. I've been looking underneath the truck. I haven't seen any oil, but let's go take a look. So our oil pan here, at least feels clean. I can't see any oil on that. Looking up at the bolts up here, before we had a whole bunch of oil on like a lot of the bolts actually, and I'm not seeing any oil on any of the bolts either. There is a little bit of oil on the starter wire, but this thing was like freaking caked in oil before. It's probably just still leaking out from that, so I'm not too worried about that. So I think we did it. I'm gonna call that a successful repair. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably like a level 4 difficulty. And really, it would only be a 2, because I mean, we're talking about a cross member you take out, easy. The differential, the bolts are kind of hard to get to, but not too bad. 16 bolts on the oil pan, and so that's like a level 2, but then where we upgrade to a 4 is like the stress level of it. You have to get everything super clean. You have to put the silicone on in a 4mm thick bead. It has to be like super perfect. You have to get it in there without touching it or anything. You have to do it within 10 minutes. You have to tighten down all the bolts perfectly and then go back and retighten them within an hour. It's just a lot to do, or a lot to stress about anyways, but if you're gonna do it, just get in there, do it, go for it. It's really not that hard when you look back on it. So we'll see what the future for this truck holds. I was planning on some upgrades for it, but if it's gonna keep leaking oil out of seals all the time, I don't know. I'll probably keep it for a little while, see how it goes. But until next time, the truck got some shampoo, but I haven't tried this yet. Oh, that's nice. It kind of tingles. Wait, no, it burns. It burns. And so now that the job's done, we can take a moment to appreciate the newest addition to the shop, which is right up there. So Alan was over here the other day, and without me knowing, he put my senior photo from high school up on the wall. Only thing is though, Alan, I guess, forgot that whenever I get revenge on somebody, I do it like 10 times worse than what they did to me. So get ready, Alan, something's coming your way.